Hello, and welcome to another video. So I have this very quick, just a little quick conversation. At least in my mind, it's going to be quick. You see the title of the video. And I just want to give you a little backstory. Okay. You probably heard the story before, but I'm going to tell the story again. Because I don't want you to miss out on what God has for you because you're listening to people saying foolish things. All right. So I actually was on Instagram, which I don't spend very much time on there, girl. I post and move. But this day I saw, I don't know, a lot of like prayer stuff comes up on my feed, and some things be a little foolish. I ain't gonna lie. Some things be a little foolish. But I saw someone said in the comments that praying for a future husband was giving idol worship. And I said, man, now how foolish is that? Okay. And to make sure that you're not one of those women who think that this is foolish, I want to sit down and have a conversation with you. So without further ado, let's get started with today's video. So idol worship, when the person said idol worship, let's chop up a little picture here, okay? So an idol is something that you place above God, okay? Something that you commit yourself to worshiping. You want this so bad that you'll do anything for it. In that instance, you have indeed created an idol out of the idea of marriage. Tizney, what does that look like practically? It looks like, let's say you're in a relationship and this relationship you feel is leading to marriage. Go check out the video that I made the other day. A lot of the times it don't, okay? You feel that this relationship is leading to marriage and you're sleeping with this man. Now, you know, you're a woman of God. You pray and you're doing all of the above. You're doing all of the above. And yet you won't get out of the bed because you don't believe that if you get out of the bed, you'll still be able to secure this man. You are in the position of idol worship. You know why? Because you know the truth and you won't let go of this thing. You want it so bad that you're willing to disappoint God, that you're willing to grieve the Holy Spirit to get it. You have stepped into idol worship. But let me paint for you a different picture, which is the picture that I don't think the person who left that comment could gather. And I want to talk a little bit about it today. You guys know my husband was in my vicinity for a full year and I didn't even know it. I knew him as a fellow coworker. Here's the executive chef and then here's the sous chef. He was the sous chef of the kitchen and everybody else was kind of, so I knew him as kind of like a boss, the person who organized the kitchen. That's what I knew him as. I didn't know him as that. He was not my man. He was none of that. Okay. When we first came into the kitchen, we kind of we knew that, you know, something's there. We knew a little something like that. We tried it. It didn't work. Okay. And from the moment we tried it and it didn't work, I was like, okay, I'm moving on. I had got out of a very long relationship. I was getting out of it. I was working go watch that video from yesterday. I was working myself out of this relationship that I had been entangled in for so long. So I refused to keep going in relationships that looked exactly like what I come from. So I was totally like, I'm not even bothering this situation. And God began to give me directions about this particular man. Now, when he gave me directions about this man, he did not give me directions about this man as if he was my man. He gave me these directions about this man as if he was somebody else's man, as if he was a man, as if he was a child of God and he needed prayer. He needed, direction. That was how God was speaking to me concerning him. I did not take it up on myself to say, Lord, if I'm going to pray for him, he better be mine. That is not. Actually, I remember not wanting to do the things that God was telling me to do. God would tell me things like, when you walk into work, I want you to say good morning and smile at him. Not anybody in the kitchen. Don't do it to just anybody. Do it to that person. And later on, I got to hear his story. I got to hear what he was going through at that time of his life. And I realized how pivotal those small directions, that's a small act of kindness. I realized how intentional God is. And I realized how pivotal that was in not just his life, but I didn't know that his life will one day become my life. Imagine being asked to sow a seed, refusing, and not realizing that was your garden that you were supposed to put that seed in. Imagine that, because you think that praying for a future spouse is idol worship. So again, I say, are you placing the desire for marriage over God? because it wasn't, God gave me that message and I kept that message over here. I did not bring that message into my workplace. So I wasn't in the workplace looking for a man. At no point in time was I just roaming around. Look at which one's my husband. No. I wanted to be obedient. And in my obedience, God actually had me praying for my husband. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? So some things that look a little bit, and before I get into the good stuff, which it's all good stuff, right? Before I get into I guess the blessings of it all, we're going to look at some of the things that really they are idol worship. And you might have a hard time with it if you're having a hard time with one of these. You're still praying about silly things like a man's height, a man's finances, little things like that, things that you can see with your natural eye. And you're not praying about things like a man's character, like this man's future. And like I said, when you're praying these prayers, you're not praying these prayers because you see a person. When I saw that person, I looked at him as a child of God. And Father, you know what your child needs. Not because you want him to be my man, but you know what he needs. And if this even is for him and another woman, like, I don't know this man. So whatever you're having me to pray these prayers for, to intercede on this man's behalf, I'll pray that. So you're praying these prayers because God's giving you a word. You know that you're going to get married, whatever. You're praying these, you're not praying amiss, okay? So talking about things like, come on, like height and finances, you're wasting time. You're wasting good prayer time. And you're negating the man's character, the stuff that actually matters. The stuff that actually builds marriages. The stuff that actually helps to sustain marriages. That's the stuff you need to be praying about. So if you caught up on all the other stuff, yeah, it's looking like idol worship, okay? And another thing is that you think that bantering God and begging God and crying and fasting and you're doing all of that and you refuse to change your ways is going to change God's mind. It's giving idol. It's giving idol worship. It is. Because guess what? You can cry all you want. You can cry all you want and you can still roll around in this bed with this person, and you can get down on your knees after you rolling around in the bed with this person, and you can continue to cry and pray. And guess what? God is a God of principles. He's a God of principles. And unfortunately, so is the enemy. All right. Or should I say fortunately, because you know that there's a law. I did this video for you guys a while ago, that there is a law that you're following that is giving you the same results. So if you want a different result, you're going to have to do something different. So stop praying about something and not refusing to do something different. Okay? Okay. You think that manipulating the man that you have right now that's not really your man, him, you think that manipulating him via prayer to God because you actually want to marry this man is going to change God's mind about him, and it's not. It's giving idol. It's giving idol worship. It is. You can't manipulate God. You can keep those witchcraft prayers to yourself. Manipulating situations and outcomes, you can keep them to yourself. You can actually shut up about it if you don't want to do anything different. Okay? Now let's move on to the nicer part of this video. I'm just trying to help. Like I said, no one was this blunt with me. I live in fantasy land, and some of you are still living in the very same fantasy land. And then some of us are taking away good principles, God principles that will really help you to get to your desired outcome, and replacing it with total nonsense. So if you're not praying for your future spouse, baby, what are you doing? Sitting around with your arms folded waiting for him? In your home, he's gonna be the maintenance man. He's gonna come knock at the door. The cable guy won't even have cable like that no more. He's gonna come knock at the door. You need to be praying about everything, especially the man that you're going to roll over and lay in the bed with for the rest of your life. I would hope that you would say a prayer too about him. So people who say things like that, here's the first thing that I know that you don't understand. You don't understand that prayer establishes what's in heaven on earth. That God has spoken a word. And even though the word is spoken, sometimes it's conditional. There's some things that have to change here for things to align. And when you're not praying, you don't have that realization. You think that you can just get whatever you want. I don't know about your Bible, but my Bible tells me that if I'm not praying, guess who is praying? Guess who's trying to find a way to destroy me? My enemy. Guess who's praying that I actually never get the wholeness, that I actually never find the husband, that I actually never have the kids that will help to free this generation? Guess who's praying that? My enemy. You better look like praying for your future husband. The next thing prayer does is it allows you to come into agreement with God's will. Yes, make your requests made known. Say what you want. Let God know your request. But after you've let God know your request, you better believe that you want his will over your request anyways. That's what's going to happen anyway. But you better believe that his will is better even than your request. Could you imagine that? And you establish this in prayer. You establish relationship in prayer, and you get to know the God who wouldn't give you just any old kind of man. You've cleaned up your life, and you're over here living wholeheartedly for God. Why would he just give you any old kind of man? So you didn't clean up your life. You refuse to clean up your life. You refuse to live holy and set apart. So you're afraid of the type of man that you're going to get, and you should be afraid. You should be afraid if you don't want to do the right thing and you over here praying for God to send you a man. Next thing is, you might be like me. Your situation might be a lot like mine, and you're actually establishing trust in your marriage before you're even married. Could you imagine the beauty that is a marriage when a man trusts your voice? You know why my husband can trust my voice? Because whenever I've heard from God, I've acted on exactly what God told me to do. Even, go watch some of those wifey series videos, even if it wasn't what I wanted to do. Even if it wasn't what I wanted to do. See, half of our problem is we have so much free will that you're actually in bondage. The freedom that you have actually has you in chains. Imagine that. But I did what the Lord said, even if it was uncomfortable for me, because at the end of the day, I know that he's my father, that really his desire, his plans are to prosper me, to give me hope and to give me a future, and for my life to look a lot better than it's looking right now. But he can't do it without your participation. So you might be like me, and you're actually feeding. Like I said earlier, could you imagine you sowing those seeds was actually you putting seeds in your own garden? And because you didn't know that it was your garden, you said, baby, they could take care of that themselves. I ain't about to do that. Who about to be planting stuff in the garden that's not mine? Not realizing that God was going to bless you. Not realizing that God was going to give you houses that you didn't build, okay? Could you imagine passing up the opportunity? So, should you, in fact, pray for your future spouse? I absolutely believe that you should. You need to pray for your future spouse like your future depends on it. Imagine having a man in your life that you did not pray for. And this happened suddenly. When I tell you all the prayers that I was praying collided with a perfect moment. I got engaged very quickly. I got married very quickly. We've been married. We're going into our 7th year of marriage. All because God spoke a word. I acted on the word that God spoke. I didn't have friends chirping in my ear. I didn't care what nobody said. Baby, if the Lord is speaking. But how do you know the Lord is speaking? Well, you don't know if the Lord is speaking if you don't spend no time with him. No wonder you're confused. So, as always, if you have a question, ask a question, and I'll see you in the next video.